listen, the people that really need us out here to be teaching them on YouTube and Twitch is beginners. Let me qualify that. And I'm not saying that more advanced people don't need education too, right? Because obviously, you know, you got your channels you watch. If you're an advanced level person, you know how to direct your own learning. You have a foundation to stand on. But when we're talking about beginners, what I'm thinking about, and this is for companies out there too, like if you're in the ed tech space and you're trying to format your content for an audience, you know, I recommend beginners, because in this age we're in right now, where like these AI tools are as powerful as they are, educational systems, you know, and I'm talking like the traditional pathways, are sort of failing students and like truly preparing them and giving them hands-on skills. They're coming out, a lot of beginners are coming out pretty much blind, or expecting or walking into a industry they're not even close to prepared for. So they don't have a foundation, a strong foundation. So when you're developing your content, teach that person. And I'm talking about assuming no knowledge of technology. So like when I start, I'm thinking about the hardware basics, all the way to like networking basics, operating system basics, Windows and Linux, maybe a little Mac OS. You know, then you get into how do we administer many of these systems at once. You know, if you sprinkle in the pen testing and you know, there's a way, there's a place to start there. So when I'm making my videos, and I recommend for a lot of you out there, when you make your videos, at least make some for beginners, because this is going to be a really hard time for them, you know, because like as far as AI, like coding and these agentic AI have come, it's going to be harder and harder for these folks to get a job, because more and more companies are going to be like, oh yeah, couldn't we just use AI for that? And so they'll like be hiring experienced and advanced like expert level people, or people that they think are experts, and it's like the entry level, we can't forget about them. And even like hiring managers, let's keep our mind open to entry level. So like what are the expectations for the entry level role? Are we hiring people full time? How are we writing the positions? The position shouldn't be like has 10 years of experience administering enterprise network environments and building database. Like that's not an entry level role, right? You know, the joke about the CISSP, which seems to have gone away since they came out with more entry level certs. Like the CISSP is not an entry level role. And for the longest time, there was the whole argument about, is cybersecurity as a sub-discipline even an entry-level discipline? Is like, and when you think about the entry level of cybersecurity, like what floor is that on? If we're looking at it, your career as like a learning at stages or levels of a building, and the entry levels like help desk, IT support, and cybersecurity is like floor 4. The entry level of floor 4 starts at 3, right? Like you have to pass 3. It's just, I don't know. That's the way I look at it. If you're creating an entry level in cybersecurity, you've got to have the IT fundamentals. You've got to have them. You know, I think you can pivot. It depends on what you're securing, of course, but like you can pivot from like software engineering into like web application security, but there's some security on top of it. Again, you're not starting in security, you're starting as a software engineer. The general perspective that I do hold on this, and I know I'm ranting a little bit, let me know in the comments your thoughts, but like the general thought I have in belief that I hold strong on this is that like we should consider cybersecurity at every level. and that it's weird that cybersecurity even became a separate industry in and of itself that sells its own set of products and services and has all these different job titles, where like it's almost like deferring responsibility to the cybersecurity people, where then that creates this like this perspective that, oh well, we're not security people really, so let's just leave it up to the security people to secure what we're building. I mean, if you're like an IT systems engineer, an infrastructure engineer, and you're not thinking about security, or a software engineer and you're not thinking about security, like that's a problem. That's where vulnerabilities can come from. So I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing and ranting based on my experience and my beliefs on, how cybersecurity works. But, there's no real like permanent state of security where it's like, now we have all these cybersecurity people, so we're secure. Like, it's like you could still be vulnerable if someone clicks you could still get hacked if someone clicks a link in their email, right? It's just, how ready are you for that? The readiness is good. I like to think about the comparison with cybersecurity is a lot like law enforcement, where, it's not like, maybe I'm pessimistic about it now, but it's not that like crime will ever reach zero. Is there a world where crime ever reaches zero? Like for police officers out there or aspiring police officers, I wonder, are you getting into law enforcement so that crime would reach zero? It's almost like a balance that you're achieving, where it's like, if we don't have police, we kind of get Gotham, where it's like overrun by criminal syndicates and just horrible and overrun by evil. But if we have like good police and good law enforcement, then it's like only like that in some places, and that's kind of sad too. But I don't know. I think about the same way with cybersecurity. Is like you need to have cybersecurity sort of baked into IT as a whole to balance the tide a bit, the cyber war that is going on, and the people that are constantly trying to hack into organizations. And that's where, it does make sense as a separate discipline, is like you do need a group of people to monitor and constantly look for the attack. Where when it gets big enough as a company or an organization, you've got like people to support the infrastructure, to build software, build applications, to deploy the applications, to administer the infrastructure and engineer the infrastructure that the applications run on, and then like security sort of continually monitoring these systems and preventing attacks, and maybe even simulating attacks that could happen and preparing the organization. So I do think it's a constant preparedness. So when you're teaching this, or for people that are watching this that are trying to learn this, this is really what you're up against. And you should get momentum. That's the goal. The momentum in your learning. Get to the point where you've learned enough, you've got enough of the foundations that you're useful enough to an organization, a team, someone sees it in you that you can learn this stuff and that you're interested in it. And I would say your interest is probably the most important thing in all of this, is if you have an intense interest, that will carry you to learn everything you need. Then, following some of these videos, following some of these creators out there, going to school for it, it all makes you better to like really help. And then you get in, and when you get in the industry, that's when you really start learning at another level, because now you're paid to do it and you're doing it every day. So it's like routine almost. And you're just like learning things that, I'll say I know I'm going on my rant. I think this is an important rant, but if you haven't got your first IT or cybersecurity job yet, this is the hardest part of your career. Once you get over this, you got it. You're in the industry. Your momentum is every day. You got that job every day, right? To go back to. And as long as you're doing a good job and economy's good, organization doing well, you'll keep that because you're needed and your skill set's needed. And there's plenty of need in the industry for our skill set. And you got to keep going. Like, you just keep that momentum. But right now, if you're a beginner, you really got to make time for it. You really got to make time for it. It's hard. Some people work factory jobs, and at the end, I've had this conversation many times. Like, at the end, it's like, when do I make time? RWX Rob made a video recently. You should check it out. It's like, do you want my job? ? And he touches on this in a brilliant way. A lot of people have talked about it. I've had to go through it, where I was working at a car wash. My first job was at a car wash, and my first real, it was back in high school, and even through college, I worked at a car wash in Mooresville, North Carolina called ProShine Car Wash. And it had nothing to do with IT. They had a one Wi-Fi network and this conveyor belt system that you hit start on after you typed in the PIN, and it sent the car through, and then you dried it. It was not where I wanted to stay for the rest of my life, but it was it helped me build that work ethic. But I know I had to put in extraordinary effort to develop a skill set outside of that car wash, those hours I was putting in at that car wash, to make the transition over. And I was thankful enough to have my mentor who taught me not everything I know, but all the foundations, and he even helped me get my first job. His name was Mr. Whitehead. He was a teacher at Mitchell Community College. And, he helped me get my first job and my first experience. He introduced me to it in the lab. What's a switch? What's a router? What a PC is, connecting PC to a monitor even. I remember, I was not the one building PCs as a kid. I watched my dad take the PC apart and add upgrades to it, more RAM, all this. But I hadn't done that. Even through my teens, up into my early teens, up into my late teens, early 20s, where I started going to school and really stepped into that lab, and then fell in love with IT, fell in love with networking, and my interest carried me. Because I promise you, I had peers who were further along than me because they had built PCs before. And they just knew PC. They knew a little bit more about IT. Or Windows, I say new PC, but new Windows and all the caveats of installing drivers, which I thought was so technical back then. And, eventually I skyrocketed after catching that bug and locking in. I took my competitive nature and love for basketball and applied it to IT. And if you can see it like a sport, and I made a video called IT's Like a Sport. If you can see it like that, if you're a sportsman or a competitive person, you can apply it that way. You can say, all right, I see someone's good at MongoDB, or I see somebody's got a really strong skill set in software engineering. Let that inspire you. Don't let it, oh man, I suck, da-da-da. Because if it was basketball, if you're a baller, if it was basketball, you wouldn't let that discourage you. You'd be like, all right, bet. And you'd start trying to dribble drive on them or hit a three in their face. I'm not saying you got to compete with everybody, but I'm saying be inspired by those talented people you come across. Be like, oh, I need that skill set. Maybe even ask them, how'd you get as good as you did? Because I promise you they weren't born with the knowledge of MongoDB or Redis or Hack the Box. Like I wasn't born knowing Hack the Box existed, right? Like they didn't exist when I was born. You had to learn about this stuff. Like you got to take the effort. Anybody could learn this. And some ego-driven folks are gonna say like they don't like people to believe that they can learn what they learned, right? Like you may come across that personality where there's like it's ego-driven, where they're just like elitist. You will come across elitists, and they do try to make people feel bad about not knowing a certain technology. But the thing is, this is such a well-documented field that you can learn this stuff by just building it, right? And you can pass up some industry experts. I could talk about the word expert all day and how I think it's crazy that we're saying there's experts in cybersecurity. The expert in cybersecurity today could be a noob tomorrow because they don't know about a new vulnerability that just came out. And you could have a 13-year-old hack Rockstar Games. Look it up. Look up the last Rockstar hack and how it happened. I'll say that much. But it's like, you got to stay humble too in this field. You got to stay humble. And if you're really focusing on security, it's almost, you got to be just empty like Bruce Lee, right? Be like water. Just like, don't have any ego, be sort of neutral about it, and just diligent. Like, use your knowledge the best of your ability, but don't think you know. To defend networks is to realize that you don't know what's out there, right? Like, you don't know what's out there, and it takes another level of like maturity to admit that, where you're like, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna actively threat hunt. I'm gonna actively hunt for what are these APTs or advanced persistent threats doing? What are they doing? Like, how are they trying to hack environments? Like, that's one of the reasons I like, there's a blog called the DFIR report. I've talked about this in like my video I did on blogs. But the thing I like about this blog is it's like super technical from a defensive standpoint. So like and it's long. Like, you read these, real incident responders post these, and these are redacted, but these are actual artifacts found on an engagement. And when I say engagement, I mean incident response. So a hack happened, they stopped it, or they caught it after, or it was detected, and they went in and they saw through the logs what the attacker did, how they dumped credentials, how they went through this whole process. And this is almost like reading like a Hack the Box write-up or a pen test report in reverse. It's a reverse pen test report, because it's like, how did they attack, and then where did they go? Because the reports will have things that a pen tester would never do, because the pen testers have rules they got to follow, where like the criminals do not. The criminals are like, that's the great disadvantage we're up against as ethical people, or well-meaning good faith rule-following people, is that the malicious hackers, not only are they talented and skilled in most cases, they also don't care. They're like, I don't care if your laws say this. I cannot be traced. They've hopped from this machine to this machine to this machine to attack this network. So just being empty so you could constantly, or being like water so that you can constantly ingest information, the latest information. But I will say, like, it's not like there's no pathway. There's a pathway, and there's pretty commonly agreed upon foundational skills that you can read. And that's what I try to provide on my channel a bit, and why I try to steer you to different resources is Build your foundation. This will all start making sense as a beginner. And then you can start, like, and you should start reading this now, even if it's completely confusing. Like, you read through this and whatever confuses you, even if it's all of it, go research what that is. Like, hey, maybe you're like, what's C program data? What's the C drive program data? Go read that. Go read up on that. Ask Grok. You live in the best time to learn this stuff because of how well it's documented, and because I don't necessarily have to, you don't have to rely on me being, maybe I'm asleep and you left a question in my Discord or some other, one of your favorite content creators or your instructor. You don't have to wait on them to like answer your question. You got an LLM that you can ask questions to, many of them. I prefer Grok. I'm just a little biased there. I'm a big Elon fan. Think the guy's kind of smart and is kind of leading and very visionary in a lot of ways. But like, you got Claude. I'm not a huge fan of ChatGPT, but they're a top player. That I know they're good, or at least it's got a quality model there that you can ask questions to. And just try it out. Like try to learn it, dive in. Start somewhere, right? And that's why I'm guiding so much, and taking long with my videos, letting mistakes live in there. Have courage, be empty in the sense that there's no ego. You're just sort of you're curious about reality. Stay curious about the attacks and the reality of cybersecurity, not just 10 years ago or what's in the textbooks, what's happened last week. What about like today, right? What's the environment we're in now? Like, let's say you get a job. Learn the environment you're in now. And don't just take people's word for it. And people are like, oh yeah, it's set up right. I promise. I've been doing this 37,000 years. And I got this cert. I got about 75 of them. Yeah. And I got this expert level cert, knower of all associate. And you're like, and you're just like, okay, well, this guy knows everything. Like, that doesn't exist. That does not exist. So, go check for yourself. A lot of times people will not check. They just take somebody's word for it. Oh, it's secure. We locked it down because such and such expert of all things did it. And he's just God. And you like finally discover, oh, there was a mistake here. We're getting hacked, right? Like, oh, wow, I discovered it because you were open-minded. Keep the open mind. And it'll be easier to keep things secure. I've learned even to not like guarantee it. Like when I get in meetings, like I can never guarantee that this will never get hacked. I can give a strategy on how, as a team, we can consistently monitor and keep this secure. But remember, security is not, it's not a permanent state. It's a constantly changing state. And it's a balance. So all that to say, keep learning. I'm glad you watched this. I appreciate you. Reach out to me anytime you need help. God bless you, whether it's in the stream or in the videos. Put in the comments below if you have any questions, whatever it is. Hopefully this helps. And we'll see you next time.